The night sky above the alien city was always dark. Thick smoke rose from broken towers and covered the stars. Once this world had been full of life. Now it was silent, hungry, and cold. In the shadows of the ruined streets lived a widow and her little daughter. They were alone. They were forgotten. The widow had lost her husband in the last war. He had been a worker in the factories, strong and proud. When the human ships came, the war ended quickly. But the factories closed. The empire that ruled their planet no longer cared for the poor. The soldiers left. The traders stopped visiting. Only the hungry remained. Every morning the widow searched for food. She walked through the ruins, past the market where the rich still traded. She had no money. She had nothing to offer except her tired hands. Sometimes she begged, but the shopkeepers pushed her away. To them, she was weak. To them, she was useless. Her little girl waited for her each evening, thin arms, hollow cheeks, big eyes shining in the dark. The child tried not to cry, but hunger was stronger than pride. The widow could not bear to see her daughter like this. She would give up her own share of food so the girl could eat. Still, it was never enough. The city around them was cruel. Neighbors closed their doors. Strangers looked away. Everyone was afraid. Everyone was selfish. Food was gold. Trust was gone. The widow often thought of her husband. He would have fought. He would have protected them. But she was alone now. One night while the child slept, the widow sat near the broken window and stared at the streets below. She could see the glow of the human camp in the distance, tall lights, strong walls, soldiers in strange armor. She had heard many stories about humans. Some said they were monsters. Some said they were saviors. No one knew the truth. What she knew was simple. Humans had food. Humans had medicine. Humans had everything her daughter needed. Her hands shook as she thought about it. Could she go to them? Could she beg? What if they killed her? What if they laughed? Shame and fear filled her heart. She wanted to believe there was hope, but she was too tired to dream. The little girl, even in sleep, whispered for bread. Her small voice broke the silence. The widow pressed her hand over her mouth, holding back her own tears. A mother should protect. A mother should provide. But she had nothing left. Days passed. Hunger grew worse. The widow searched trash piles, pulling out spoiled roots and broken fruit. She boiled water and pretended it was soup so her daughter could sleep with a full stomach. The child was clever. She knew the truth. Still, she pretended too, smiling weakly to make her mother feel less guilty. Then came the moment that would change everything. The widow and her daughter sat near the marketplace one afternoon. They hid in the shadows, hoping to catch the smell of food. Suddenly, they saw something unusual. A group of humans stood among the stalls. Their uniforms were strange, their faces tired, but firm. One of them was giving out food to alien orphans. The widow froze. She could not believe her eyes. A human bending down to feed children? It was something she had never imagined. She felt her daughter's small hand grip her own. The child's eyes were wide, filled with both fear and hope. "Mother," the girl whispered. "Look." The widow pulled her back. "Do not speak," she hissed. "Humans are not for us." But deep inside, a spark lit in her chest. The image of the human giving food burned in her mind. It did not match the stories. It did not match the warnings. What if the stories were wrong? The little girl, too young to fear the way her mother did, kept staring. Her lips trembled, but her gaze was firm. Hunger gave her courage that even her mother lacked. That night, when they returned to their empty home, the widow could not sleep. She turned on her bed of rags, hearing the faint breaths of her child. The thought of the human soldier stayed with her. His hands had been gentle. His eyes had been kind. For the first time in many months, the widow felt something strange. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was the smallest trace of hope. But hope was dangerous. Hope could break a heart. She tried to push it away. She told herself that humans were not saviors. They were outsiders. They would never help someone like her. Yet hunger does not listen to reason. Hunger digs into the bones. Hunger whispers louder than fear. And in that silence, the widow realized something. Her daughter had seen the human too. Her daughter had hope. And when a child has hope, a mother cannot stop it. The city slept, but inside that broken home, a decision was forming. The widow did not know it yet, but her life was about to change. Her little girl would soon do something no one expected. And the story of humans and aliens would never be the same again. The marketplace was alive with noise, yet it carried no joy. Alien traders shouted prices, but their goods were poor and rotten. Hungry families crowded around stalls fighting for scraps. The widow held her daughter's hand tightly, guiding her through the chaos. She hoped to find something cheap, maybe a broken loaf or a cracked fruit. But then she stopped. Something strange had entered the marketplace. At first, the crowd grew silent. Heads turned, voices lowered. Soldiers in unfamiliar armor walked between the stalls. Their tall frames and steady steps made them impossible to ignore. The widow felt her heart race. These were humans. She had heard of them for years but had never seen one so close. Their skin was pale compared to her people, their eyes sharper, their movements confident. They looked dangerous, but also calm. The widow froze, ready to pull her child away. The humans did not behave like conquerors. They did not shout or push. Instead, one of them placed a large bag on the ground and began pulling out packages. The widow blinked in disbelief. The soldier was handing food to alien children. Alien orphans rushed forward, their thin arms reaching out. The human knelt, giving each child a packet of bread and dried meat. He smiled, though his face looked tired. He did not speak their language, but kindness needs no translation. The widow's daughter clutched her mother's arm. "Mother, he is giving food," she whispered, her voice trembling. The widow pulled her back. "Stay quiet, do not go near." Yet she could not stop staring. The human's actions were unlike anything she had seen. Her own people had turned away from her, treating her and her daughter as useless burdens. But here was a stranger, an outsider, from another world, feeding children who were not his own. Another human soldier stood guard nearby. His hand rested on a strange weapon, his eyes scanning the crowd. Yet even his presence was not cruel. It was watchful, protective. He kept danger away while the first soldier gave food. The widow's heart beat faster. She wanted to believe it was real, not a trick. Hunger made people see illusions. Hunger could turn hope into madness. She wondered if her eyes were lying, but her daughter was seeing the same thing. The little girl's gaze was fixed on the soldier, her eyes wide with wonder. The widow whispered, "Do not look at them, they are not for us." The girl shook her head softly. "Why not? They have food. They are helping." The widow felt her chest tighten. Shame and fear battled inside her. She wanted to scream at her daughter to protect her from disappointment, from heartbreak. But no words came. The human soldier noticed the eyes watching him. He looked up and saw the widow and her child. For a moment, their worlds collided. The widow quickly lowered her gaze, pulling her daughter close, ready to leave. But the child did not move. The human's eyes lingered on them. Not with anger, not with pity, it was something else. Recognition. As if he understood their hunger without a single word, he reached into his bag and lifted another packet of food. He held it in the air, offering it toward them. The crowd shifted, staring. The widow's cheeks burned. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide. Her pride screamed louder than her stomach. Accepting charity was shameful. Accepting from a human was unthinkable. But her daughter's tiny hand pulled against her grip. The child looked up at her with pleading eyes, then back at the soldier. "Mother," she whispered. "He is waiting." The widow's breath caught in her throat. Her whole body shook. She could not take the step forward, but neither could she. "Pull away. Hunger chained her in place. Then something unexpected happened. Her daughter let go of her hand. The little girl, small and frail, walked a few steps toward the human. The marketplace held its breath. The soldier lowered himself, kneeling so his eyes met hers. He smiled and gently placed the food in her hands. The girl bowed her head, whispering a thank you in her own tongue. She could not know if he understood, but she said it anyway. The widow stood frozen. Her heart pounded in fear and shame, yet tears stung her eyes. For the first time in years, someone had given her child food without asking for anything in return. The soldier nodded once, firm and respectful, then turned back to the other children. The girl walked back, holding the packet like it was treasure. She looked up at her mother with a small smile. The widow could not speak. Her pride was wounded, her fears were heavy, but something inside her cracked open. That night, as they sat in their cold shelter, the little girl ate slowly, saving half, the food for her mother. The widow tried to refuse, but the child insisted. Between bites, the girl said softly, "Mother, the humans are not monsters. They are kind. Maybe they can help us more." The widow said nothing. She lay awake long after her daughter had fallen, asleep, staring into the dark. The image of the human soldier kneeling before her child burned in her mind, and deep within her, something dangerous was growing again. Hope. The next morning came with the same hunger, but something inside the little girl had changed. She no longer looked at the empty streets with despair. She looked at them with a quiet determination. Her mother noticed it at once. The widow tried to prepare their usual trick, boiling plain water so her daughter could pretend it was soup. But the child shook her head. "Mother," she said softly, "we cannot live like this forever. We must ask the humans for help again." The widow stiffened. She placed the cracked pot back on the ground. Her voice trembled as she answered, "No, yesterday was a mistake. I should not have let you near them. If they wanted, they could have harmed you. Never do that again." The child met her gaze without fear. "But they did not harm me. They gave me food. They were kind." The widow closed her eyes. The truth was undeniable, yet her pride refused to accept it. Her people had been raised to see humans as outsiders, intruders, beings who cared nothing for alien suffering. To accept their kindness felt like betrayal. The little girl, too young to be burdened by such beliefs, continued in her small but steady voice, "Maybe humans are different. Maybe they do not leave children hungry." The widow turned away, her heart heavy. "Kindness has a price," she said. "Do not forget that. Nothing is free in this world." But the child was clever. Hunger had made her wise beyond her years. She whispered something that stunned her mother into silence. "Then we must give them something they cannot refuse." The widow frowned. "What do we have to give? We are poor, we have nothing." The girl hesitated, her small fingers tightening around the piece of cloth that served as her blanket. Her cheeks were hollow, but her eyes burned with a strange light. "We can offer them a promise," she said. "A promise that will bind them to us." The widow shook her head, confused. What promise could a child make to a human soldier? The girl lifted her chin, brave despite her trembling voice. "I will ask the human to marry you. If he agrees, he will take care of us. He will never let us starve." The words struck the widow like a thunderclap. Her breath caught in her throat. She stared at her daughter in disbelief, unable to speak. Marriage. The idea was unthinkable. Her people did not mix with other species. To even suggest such a thing was madness, it was shameful, it was impossible. But the little girl was not afraid of shame or impossibility. She was afraid of hunger. She was afraid of losing her mother to despair. The widow's voice rose, harsher than she intended. "Do not speak of such things again. You do not understand." The child did not flinch. Her innocence gave her strength. "I understand enough. I understand that we are dying. I understand that you are too proud to beg. So I will ask for you." The widow's hands shook. She wanted to scold her daughter. She wanted to silence her. But deep inside, she knew the Child was speaking a truth she herself was too weak to admit. That night, sleep did not come easily. The widow lay awake, listening to her daughter's soft breaths. The idea echoed in her mind, twisting her heart with shame and fear. To ask a human for help was one thing. To tie their lives to one through marriage was another. Yet the more she tried to dismiss it, the more it returned. Humans were strong. Humans had food, protection, and purpose. A single human soldier had shown more kindness in one day than her neighbors had shown in years. Was it truly madness for her child to hope for something greater? The widow turned and looked at her daughter, who was curled up beside her, sleeping peacefully despite the hunger. For the first time in months, the girl's face carried a trace of comfort. She was dreaming of a future, not of despair. The widow pressed her hands to her chest, whispering into the darkness, "What are you planning, little one?" She did not yet know that her daughter's innocent words were more than a child's fantasy. The girl was serious, and soon the human soldier would hear the proposal with his own ears. The city outside slept, but fate was moving quietly, unseen. In the silence, a bridge between two worlds was already being built, not by diplomats or warriors, but by a hungry child who refused to surrender. And when dawn arrived, the widow would discover that her daughter's courage was far greater than her own. The morning sun rose weakly over the broken city. Dust floated in the air, painting the sky in dull colors. The widow wrapped her thin shawl around her shoulders, preparing to take her daughter back to the market. She did not want to go, but hunger left no choice. Her daughter, however, walked beside her with unusual calm. She was not afraid, not silent, not hopeless like before. There was something determined in her steps. The widow noticed it but said nothing. The marketplace was as cruel as always. Traders shouted, guards watched. The poor begged and were ignored. Yet in one corner of the market stood the humans again. Their tall shapes were impossible to miss. The same soldier who had fed the orphans the day before was there, kneeling once more, sharing food from his bag. His armor reflected the morning light, and his calm eyes scanned the faces of hungry children. The widow felt her chest tighten. She wanted to turn away, to hide from the memory of yesterday. But her daughter pulled her hand forward. "Mother," the girl whispered. "Today I will speak to him." The widow froze. Her eyes widened in shock. "No," she hissed under her breath. "You will not. You cannot." But the girl had already let go of her mother's hand. The widow's heart leapt as she watched. Her daughter walked toward the human soldier. Every step felt like a nightmare. She wanted to scream, to pull her back, but her body refused to move. Fear chained her in place. The human soldier noticed the small figure approaching. He paused, lowering the packet of food in his hand, and waited. His eyes were steady, curious, not hostile. The little girl stopped in front of him. She was small, her cheeks hollow, her clothes torn, but her voice was clear when she spoke. "Human," she said in the common trade language, "I want you to marry my mother." The entire market seemed to fall silent. Traders stopped shouting. Children stopped begging. Even the guards glanced in surprise. The widow felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. The human soldier blinked. For a moment he seemed unsure if he had heard correctly. He tilted his head, studying the girl's serious face. Then his gaze shifted to the widow standing frozen in the crowd. The widow's cheeks burned with shame. Her knees trembled. She wanted the earth to swallow her. Never in her life had she felt so exposed, so humiliated. The girl, however, stood, strong. She lifted her thin chin and repeated her words. "If you marry her, you will take care of us. You will not let us starve. Please." Her voice broke at the last word, but her eyes did not waver. The widow could not bear it. She rushed forward, pulling her daughter to her chest. "Forgive her," she cried out to the soldier. "She is only a child. She does not know what she says." But the soldier did not laugh. He did not mock them. He did not turn away. Instead, he looked at the widow, then at the girl, and lowered himself to one knee. His voice was calm, deep and steady. "Why would you ask this of me?" The little girl, pressed against her mother's arms, answered bravely, "Because my mother is kind. She is strong. She only needs someone who will not leave her behind. You give food to children you do not know. You are good. If you stay with us, we will live." Tears filled the widow's eyes. She tried to silence her daughter, but her own voice broke. The shame she had feared was nothing compared to the fierce love she felt in that moment. The human soldier remained quiet for a long while. Around them, the crowd whispered. Some sneered. Some stared in awe. The idea of a human marrying an alien widow was unthinkable. Yet the soldier did not dismiss it. Finally, he placed a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "I cannot promise marriage today," he said slowly, choosing his words with care. "But I promise this. You will not go hungry again." The girl's eyes filled with tears of relief. She nodded, clutching his hand with her tiny fingers. The widow, still trembling, whispered, "Why? Why would you do this for us?" The soldier looked at her with steady eyes. "Because no one should watch their child starve, not on my watch." The widow could not answer. She could only hold her daughter tightly as tears slid down her cheeks. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her with dignity. For the first time, a stranger had looked at her not as a burden, but as a person worth saving. The marketplace returned to noise, but the moment lingered. Whispers spread quickly. Some called it foolish. Some called it shameful. Yet a few looked on with quiet respect. That night, in their broken shelter, the widow stared at the packet of food the soldier had given. Her daughter slept with a small smile, holding the bread close like a treasure. The widow whispered to herself in the dark, "What have you done, little one? What door have you opened?" She did not know the answer, but she knew this much. Her daughter's words had changed everything, and the human soldier's promise was not a simple act of kindness. It was the beginning of something far greater. The days after the marketplace scene were restless for the widow. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her daughter standing before the human soldier, asking for something unthinkable. She had expected mockery, rejection, even punishment. Yet none of that had come. Instead, the soldier's promise echoed in her mind. "You will not go hungry again." But promises were fragile in this world. She had seen many broken. Her people's leaders had made promises before the war, and none had been kept. Why would a human soldier be any different? Still, the very next morning, the soldier appeared again in the market. This time, he did not simply hand out food at random. He looked for the widow and her daughter. His eyes scanned the crowd until they met hers. The widow's stomach turned. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to hide. But the little girl tugged her hand and pulled her forward. The soldier crouched as they approached. From his pack, he pulled bread, fruit, and something more, a small flask of clean water. He placed it carefully into the girl's hands. The widow whispered, "Why do you give this to us? You owe us nothing." The soldier's answer was simple. "I do this because I can." The widow had no reply. Her lips trembled, but no sound came. Day after day, the human returned. He brought food not only for the orphans, but also for the widow and her child. He never asked for payment. He never demanded service. He simply gave. The city watched in silence. Some mocked the widow, whispering that she had tied herself to a stranger, that she had begged her dignity away. But others began to see something different. They saw a soldier who treated an alien widow and child with respect, when their own people would not. The widow struggled with her feelings. Gratitude fought with pride. Shame battled against relief. Each time she accepted the soldier's help, she felt weaker, yet her daughter's growing strength reminded her that weakness had already been defeated by kindness. One evening, as the sun bled across the sky, the soldier walked with them back to their shelter. He looked at the broken roof, the cracked walls, the scraps of cloth that served as bedding. His jaw tightened. "You cannot live here," he said. "It is not safe." The widow answered with bitterness she could not hold back. Where else would we live? No one wants us. No one takes us in. The soldier looked at her for a long moment, then nodded as if making a decision. Then I will. Her breath caught. She stared at him in shock. What do you mean? The soldier's eyes did not waver. You will stay near the human camp. There is food, there is safety. No one will harm you there. The widow shook her head quickly. We are not your people. We cannot belong among you. The soldier's reply was firm. You belong where you are protected. That is enough. The little girl's eyes shone. She looked up at her mother with hope that cut through every wall of pride. The widow turned away, hiding her face. She wanted to refuse, but the truth was undeniable. Her daughter was alive because of this human. To reject him now would be to reject survival itself. That night, lying awake, the widow thought about her daughter's strange idea. Marriage had been a child's desperate solution, but in some way, the human was already fulfilling the role her daughter imagined. He fed them. He shielded them. He spoke to them with respect. And slowly, something unexpected grew in her heart. Not love, not yet, but trust. A fragile seed of trust, planted by a promise and watered with action. The next morning, when the soldier returned, the widow did not hide her face. She looked at him directly for the first time. Her voice was steady, though quiet. You keep your word. Few in this city do. The soldier gave a faint smile. Humans keep their promises. At least I do. In that moment, the widow understood, something her people had never believed. The strength of humans was not in their weapons or ships. It was in the way they chose to stand beside the weak. The girl, listening, squeezed her mother's hand. For her, the soldier's choice was already clear. He had not only fed them, he had given them something far rarer than food. He had given them hope. And in a world that had turned its back on them, hope was more powerful than any weapon. The move to the edge of the human camp changed everything for the widow and her daughter. Their old shelter of broken walls and leaking roof was gone. Now they lived inside a small tent provided by the soldier. It was plain canvas, nothing special, but to them it was a palace. It kept out the wind. It kept out the rain. And most importantly, it was safe. At first, the widow could not rest. She feared the whispers of her people. They said she had sold her dignity. They said she had chained herself to outsiders. But each night, when she saw her daughter sleeping with a full stomach, she knew pride could no longer feed a child. The soldier kept his word. He brought food every evening, not only for them, but for others nearby. He taught the widow how to cook the strange grains humans carried. He showed the girl how to boil water until it was clean. These were simple lessons, yet they felt like gifts of gold. The girl adored him. She followed him whenever he was near, asking endless questions about the stars, the ships, and the strange tools he carried. The soldier answered patiently, his voice steady, his eyes kind. Sometimes he smiled at her curiosity, and the widow saw a gentleness in him that she had not expected from a warrior. Slowly, the widow's fear began to fade. She watched him carefully, looking for signs of cruelty or hidden motives, but found none. His kindness was not a trick. His help was not a trap, it was a choice. The city, however, was not silent. Rumors spread quickly. Some of the widow's neighbors whispered that she had betrayed her people. Others said the human was foolish to waste his time on her. Yet there were also those who watched in quiet awe. They had seen the soldier walk through the market with the widow and her child at his side, not as beggars, but as companions. One evening, the widow overheard two traders arguing. Humans are dangerous, one spat. They will take everything we have. The other shook his head. That soldier shares his food when we would not. Perhaps danger is not what we should fear. Perhaps it is our own selfishness. The widow said nothing, but the words stayed with her. For the first time, she wondered if her daughter's innocent proposal had uncovered something greater than survival. The bond between them grew in small ways. When the soldier returned from patrol, the girl would run to greet him, holding up a small flower she had found or a drawing she had scratched into the dirt. He accepted each gift with the seriousness of a king receiving tribute. The widow watched quietly, her heart torn between gratitude and something she dared not name. One night, a storm swept across the city. Wind howled, rain slammed against the tent. The widow woke in fear, clutching her daughter close. Then she heard heavy steps outside. The soldier's voice called out, "Stay inside, I will hold the ropes." Through the storm, she saw him, drenched and unshaken, gripping the lines of the tent so it would not collapse. He stood there for hours, refusing to let go while others around them fled to safer ground. By dawn, the storm was gone, and the tent still stood. The widow looked at him, speechless. Her people would have left her to the wind. He had stood firm. That morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, the widow finally spoke words she had long held back. "You are not like us. You do not leave the weak behind." The soldier simply answered, "Humans protect. It is who we are." The widow felt something stir deep within her chest. Not just gratitude, not just relief, it was respect. And respect was the beginning of something more powerful than fear. The little girl, listening, smiled knowingly. In her child's heart, she believed her plan was working. She had asked for marriage, but what was growing between them was something even stronger. Trust, born from deeds, not promises. In the days that followed, the widow noticed changes in herself. She no longer walked through the market with lowered eyes. She no longer begged. She carried herself straighter, her voice firmer, not because she had found pride again, but because she had found protection. The city continued to whisper, but whispers no longer mattered. What mattered was that her daughter laughed again. What mattered was that hunger no longer ruled her life. And though she did not yet speak the words, the widow knew something had already shifted. The human was no longer just a stranger. He was a part of their lives, woven into their survival, bound by choices he had freely made. A bond was forming, not written in law, not blessed by tradition, but carved into the silence of nights shared under the same stars. A bond beyond species. The peace did not last. For weeks, the widow and her daughter lived near the human camp, their days steadier than before. But in the broken city, peace was fragile. Raiders came. They were not soldiers, only desperate men with blades and stolen guns. They preyed on the weak. The night of the attack began with fire. Flames lit the edge of the market. Screams echoed through the alleys. The widow woke to the sound of chaos and clutched her daughter close. Before she could run, the tent flap opened. The soldier stood there, weapon in hand, eyes sharp and voice steady. "Stay behind me." The widow obeyed. Fear gripped her chest, but there was no time to argue. The raiders stormed through the streets, dragging what they could carry, cutting down anyone who resisted. Neighbors hid. Some fled. No one stood to fight. No one, except the human. He stepped into the street, weapon raised. His voice rang out like thunder. "Leave them! Leave this place!" The raiders laughed. To them, one man was nothing. But the widow saw what they could not. She saw the way he planted his feet, the way his eyes burned with focus. The first raider charged. In seconds, he was on the ground. Another tried to fire, but the soldier moved faster than the widow believed possible. His strikes were clean, efficient, unyielding. The child hid her face in her mother's shawl, but the widow could not look away. For the first time, she understood the difference. Her people had given up. They had surrendered to hunger and despair. But this man, this human, refused. Even when outnumbered, even when danger closed in, he stood. The fight dragged on. The raiders pressed harder, but the soldier would not let them pass. Each time one drew near, he pushed them back. Each time a blade flashed, his own weapon answered. The widow's fear turned to awe. He was not fighting for his camp alone. He was fighting for her daughter, for the promise he had made. Finally, the raiders broke. Their courage crumbled against a single man who would not yield. They fled into the night, leaving only silence and smoke behind. The widow fell to her knees, trembling. Her daughter clung to her side, wide-eyed but safe. The soldier lowered his weapon and looked at them. His face was tired. Blood marked his armor, but his voice was steady. "You are safe now." The widow's lips trembled. "Why? Why risk your life for us?" He met her gaze. "Because humans protect what they claim as their own. Not because of law, not because of reward, because it is right." Tears filled her eyes. For years she had lived in a world where the weak were abandoned, where promises were broken, where hope was a memory, and now, here was a man from another world showing her what her people had forgotten. Her daughter's small voice broke the silence. "Mother, I told you, he will not leave us." The widow held her close, her tears falling freely. She looked at the soldier, and for the first time she did not see a stranger. She saw a protector. She saw the answer to her child's desperate hope. That night, as dawn crept over the ruined city, the widow whispered words she had never thought she would say. "You are not like us. You are human, and that is enough." The soldier gave no speech, no grand reply. He only nodded, his promise already written in his actions. From that day, the city spoke of the widow and the human soldier. Some called it madness, some called it betrayal. But those who saw it with their own eyes told a different story. They told of a bond born not from power or wealth, but from courage, kindness, and choice. And the widow herself knew the truth. Her child had once made a bold proposal out of hunger, but what had grown was something far stronger than survival. It was trust. It was family. It was hope. And in a galaxy of broken empires and forgotten people, it was proof of one simple, unshakable truth. Humans are different. Humans fight when others surrender. Humans protect when others abandon. Humans bring light where darkness rules. The widow no longer called herself forgotten. She no longer feared the nights. Because now she understood the meaning of 3 small words spoken by a soldier who kept his word. Humans protect.